listening to the Hell Horse Show podcast, your source for unscripted conversations about the latest topics in the Mustang performance space, including our own projects, products, and news. Hosted by the founder of Hell Horse Performance himself, Jeff Gray. Now, let's get started.
Thanks for tuning in to episode 3 of the Hell Horse Show, the Hell Horse Performance podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Gray, joined today by Sam Reeves up in St. Louis, and then Jack, aka Determined Veteran, is signing in from San Antonio, Texas. How are you doing today, Sam?
Hey, what's up, Jeff?
Jack, how are you doing today?
Every day's a holiday, my friend. I'm glad to be here on the podcast with you guys.
We appreciate you joining us and giving some insight on some topics. Listeners might get a little bit tired of just hearing Sam and I all the time. It's great to mix it up. Before we get going too far, Jack, why don't you kind of give the listeners a rundown of who you are, what you do, how you came to be about in the content creation world, and more importantly, what you drive and kind of what you're doing with them real quick. I know we're going to talk about that more in a minute, but just a quick synopsis. And then, of course, tell them how to find you.
Well, guys, my name's Jack from Determined Veteran on YouTube. You can actually find me on YouTube at Determined Veteran. Instagram would be Determined_Veteran, or on Facebook at Determined Veteran. I was in the United States Army for 18 and a half years, and I was medically retired for injuries I received overseas in Afghanistan. Floated around for about 2 years before I said, I've got to do something. The doctor's telling me I can't work and everything else. So I decided I was determined to do something. And so Determined Veteran was born. And we take revenue or any affiliate links from the our YouTube channel, and we put it toward disabled veteran charities. Last year with our audience, we did about $5,000 toward our disabled veterans charities and our Gold Star families. And this year our goal is $10,000. So it's an ambitious goal, and I'm thankful that companies like Hell Horse Performance have gotten behind me to support those things. But I'm just an average guy with a camera. I drive a Camaro ZL1. I drag race it. I'm building it to be a very fast automatic car. And then I also have a 19 GT350 we're about to do our twin turbo kit on. So I can't wait, and I appreciate Hell Horse's backing on those projects.
And your YouTube viewership is growing like crazy. For those that are listening that watch YouTube, obviously go check Jack out. But Jack, I think when we met into summer or beginning of summer, you weren't even monetized, had 300-400 subscribers, nothing crazy. And now you're at what, 2,500 subscribers, really skyrocketing since the demonology event, if I remember, and getting some viral content going for a channel your size. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we started this YouTube journey like back in March on the automotive side, and we've gone from March of 19 to now we're at 2,500 plus. We just had one of 3 viral videos that we've had on the channel. So really impressed with the growth. The algorithm's kind of kicking our rear end, but that's every YouTube content creator. But yeah, we're growing steadily, and that's just this week alone. It's been over 500 subscribers have added us to their watch list. So I'm very, very thankful and still scratching my head going, I never thought this experiment would go this far. You know what I mean? It was just something to keep me busy and not being able to work and have a normal job. So now it's a different experience for sure. And I appreciate you bringing that up, Jeff.
Not a problem. I mean, I think it's one of those things that you joined the YouTube community. I don't want to say late, because YouTube is still a great opportunity, but you joined it much later than a lot of the other automotive channels that are doing that we've done, or those that are around you, like Alex or Gavin or even Mike from Street Speed and all that have been in the game for a while. So it's cool to see how quickly that whole process is growing for you. And you're making good content. That's the big thing too. You're covering a lot of stuff one time. My biggest criteria with YouTubers is don't cover the same exact thing 14 times in 1 week just to make a video. And you do a very, very good job of not doing that. And I think that helps a ton. So thank you for joining us today as we kind of get going. But before we get going too far, for our listeners out there, I want to give an update with COVID-19, coronavirus. I'm not going to get into the political stance of it or what's going on, but just how it's impacting Hell Horse Performance. And in all honesty, it's not affecting Hell Horse Performance at this time. I don't plan on it affecting Hell Horse Performance at any point in time. Items are still shipping. Things will still go out. Luckily, I've never done the walk-in traffic thing or anything like that we have to worry about these groups gathering or the restrictions that are coming out on anything else. The only thing I would say about it is if anything is coming from a supplier that is affected by coronavirus, the best place to get updates from us if a product is going to be impacted is going to be on our social media, our Facebook page and the Instagram page for Hell Horse Performance. But at this time, nothing's going to impact it. It's not impacting us in a way that we won't be here in a year. I don't talk a lot about, the business side of things, and maybe will in a podcast, but Hell Horse is a debt-free business. It has no debt. We don't have to worry about the IRS coming to get the keys, or the landlord coming to get the keys, or the credit card company coming after us, or banks coming after us for missing payments and things like that. Hell Horse is a debt-free business, and that'll be a great topic for a different discussion, but we're in it for the long haul. Nothing's going to slow us down on that. Feel confident ordering your parts and getting them on time. And we're already running a quarantine and chill sale that some people may or may not find humorous. I think it's funny. We're running a little extra promo on some items to help you guys out. Digital dashes, we've temporarily reduced the price on because we're able to get some of those clusters we talked about in episode 1.
That is first come, first serve. Keep that in mind.
Those are first come, first serve. No coupon code needed. But that quarantine sale works on a lot of stuff. Taillights went down in price from $675 to $599. That's a permanent change. Was able to negotiate a better deal on that and save you guys some money. How I'm about that. But nothing has really affected it.
4 to 8 inch kit lead times haven't changed yet, but you never know on the what happens. But currently, we're still looking on track to ship those with the same current lead time that we have. Though it is for new orders, I'm going to be raising it by a week or two today. I have to do some math and figure out. Want to try to get the most accurate lead time for everybody.
Right. And so that stuff's not affected. Lead times are still there. You all get order tickets in the ticket system when you generate an order. If you've got questions about your order, concerns like, hey, I heard such and such parts from such and such company may not be coming because they're shutting down, just shoot us a message. Let us know. We'll give you as much info as we have. But at the moment, nothing has been impacted. The only thing that was impacted temporarily was getting the Euro-style taillights out of China when coronavirus was running rampant there and everything was shut down. But those taillights we talked about in that episode was 1. We talked about that in episode 1 as well, I believe, Sam. But those are in stock. Right. There's no delay on those. They're going out within a day or two now. Again, within the orders coming in. Red T-shirts have come back in. I mean, there's a lot that will hit, but overall, in a brief synopsis, nothing is impacting us. There's nothing that's going to shutter our doors. There's nothing that's going to cause any hiccups at this point from what we see with what's going on in different regions. And I think Houston, where I'm at, is a good indicator of what's coming with all the school district closures and everything else. But nothing to worry about here, guys. You got questions, phones still work, support tickets still work, and still get a hold of us on social. It's business as usual for us. And if, like I said, if something comes up, just let us know. And kind of rolling into that whole radio kit discussion that you were just bringing up there, Sam, getting a lot of questions about Sync 4 and what's going to happen with Sync 4. Is it going to go in Mustangs, things like that? And I have to be honest with you, I don't know a lot about Sync 4. I know there's not much to know yet. I know that like some of the new Explorers that I've been in have different size screens, and there's supposed to be trucks coming with different size screens. Apparently, like the Dodge Ram did a year or two ago. Right. What do you know about Sync 4? What are we learning? Do we think that it's going to be capable? I've got people asking about Bluetooth wireless well, maybe it's not Bluetooth, but wireless charging through the QI pads and things like that.
Wireless charging is in Sync 3. It's been in Sync 3 for a couple of years now. Certain cars have it. It's not exactly something you can just add to any car unless the car came with it factory, which, as far as I know, they're not putting it in, they're not putting it in Mustangs. Excuse me. So Sync 4, there's like nothing to know yet. It's not out. Nothing has it. Sync 3.4, the blue, it's still Sync 3. Sync 4 is going to look very similar. The only any press information, pictures, whatever they have on Sync 4 is all in the Mach-E. So if you want to learn more about Sync 4, go ahead and look at the Mach-E because that has the most information. So supposedly,
but we don't know how that's going to transfer over though, because that's obviously an electric car mimicking the Tesla with the features on the screen. That there might be things about that just aren't going to transfer over, I would assume, correct?
Right. Not necessarily. Honestly, it's a lot of wait and see. We just got to wait and see what gets it first. In theory, it's supposed to be the Mach-E, which I guess we're supposed to see the first deliveries at the end of this year, which we'll see if that actually happens with coronavirus. But it's a wait and see. So the biggest new thing in Sync 4 is wireless CarPlay. And I have people ask me about that every day. And to be completely honest, I don't understand why anybody cares, because I just plug my phone in when I get in the car anyway. It might as well charge it. But that's fine, to each their own. So wireless CarPlay is really the only big new thing. I think the software is going to be extremely similar, and most likely Sync 3 will get a software update to make it look extremely similar. So we just got to wait and see when we get 2021 wiring diagrams for various vehicles that are going to get it. And the new trucks are supposed to get it as well with their larger screens. And Ford's done a handful of larger screens with the latest Sync 3s. Have done the big one in the Explorer. Some of the Lincolns have 10-inch screens in them. So it varies. My guess, and this is complete conjecture, this is not a fact, is that Sync 4 will be an upgrade to Sync 3. It's going to be really expensive at first, but I do believe it will be a plug and play upgrade with the right programming. But again,
I think, I was going to say that's
we're
one of
not
the biggest
there
questions.
yet.
Should we wait on buying the Sync 3 conversion and wait for the Sync 4 conversion? I'm always like, no, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
You can, but it might be 2 years before you get Sync 4. I'm trying to get my hands on one of those large touchscreens from an Explorer. I can't even get them new, let alone pay for it new. And I just got to wait for a wrecked one to get one used. So it's going to be a while, even after we get the Mach-E coming out later this year, and that's going to be a low volume amount of cars. And then we get the 2021 F-150s and whatever gets Sync 4. It's just going to be a while before we can get parts. And at first they're going to be all wrecked cars, and then maybe after 2 or 3 years we can start getting the supply. So it takes time. It's new.
Well,
it's got to wait and see what happens.
It does seem like it's going to be a slow rollout. I mean, I've got a 2020 F350 and it's still Sync 3.4. And I mean, obviously the new generation of F-Series F-150s is coming out that's supposed to have Sync 4, I think is what we're learning. But I think you're right in the sense that it's going to be a while before it rolls out to every model. So that's probably a good indicator where you hit it on the head that it's going to be at least a couple of years if we can put it in Mustangs, especially older generation Mustangs, if it is an update.
Most likely it'll be cost prohibitive to do right away. Even if you could upgrade to a 3 to 4 upgrade, which most likely will use the same touchscreen, it's going to be $1,000 or more just for the APIM at first.
Right.
Or we can find them out of red cars. That's going to be really tough at first too. And
then the question is going to be finding the FCIMs. The same thing we struggle with now, finding the plastic surrounds, the start buttons. I think that's going to be the harder part too. Is it's already hard enough to get them for Sync 3. Let alone,
to be honest,
let alone the FCIMs from a 15 to a 20 at this point are all the same, and in that 5-year range, we still
for the
struggle
Mustangs,
to get them.
If they put Sync 4 in the Mustangs for 21, they may or may not. That's not confirmed yet. If they do put Sync 4 in the Mustangs, most likely the FCIM will be the same. So
and if they don't, it's probably a 650 thing.
I'm optimistic that it'll be an easy swap. It's just a matter of A, getting the parts, and B, how much you're willing to pay for the parts. And I know some people are willing to pay. So it's as soon as we can possibly sell something, we will sell it. Trust me. But don't hold on and wait, because it could be a long time. And Sync 3 is a great system, and Sync 4 just builds on that. So
exactly,
that's where we are.
Well, can I say something? I didn't mean to cut you off, Jeff. I was
no, go ahead, Jack. Go ahead.
As a consumer, on the backside, the Sync 3 is actually a really intuitive system, especially in the Mustang itself. Now, as far as the Sync 4, it's more of a luxurious kind of trying to compete with like the Mopar setup and everything else, because, I mean, hell, even GM is still trying to catch up. Like you guys were talking about wireless charging, the ZL1 has it, but it don't work with anything. I don't even know why they put it in the car. I mean, I'm not trying to bash GM and say, hey, Ford's everything, but I do own both platforms. But I think that when the Sync 4 comes out, I think it may be more for like the S660 package Mustang, because in my opinion, the S550 is a great platform, as we all know, but I think it's ramping down toward the new model. You know, if that makes any sense as far as the consumers wise, but man, it's going to take a lot of R&D for you guys, but I think it's going to be worth it if anybody wants. If they have the, here's the thing: when people have the money to do it and they want it, they're going to spend their money, and they might as well do it with a company like Hellhorse that's done their R&D to make sure it's perfect.
I think just the big new thing in Sync 4 that people want is the wireless CarPlay. I mean, there's, besides larger screens in some of the vehicles, in keeping in a Mustang, all you're going to really add is wireless CarPlay and slightly different software.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. I mean, it's a side discussion, not really a podcast topic, but I totally forgot that the company that supposedly makes a wireless adapter, I never heard back from them. I should probably reach back out and see if we can R&D that for this.
I've heard those do work.
It'll be interesting. I mean, that'll be a side discussion after this, but it's always great to talk about these topics because things like that pop up in my head where I'm like, wait, we never heard back from a company that says they can make us wireless adapters and we can make them work with the harnesses that we're selling or using and installing in these cars. And when we're talking about modifying stuff and making things work in another car or waiting for Sync 4, one of the big new things we finally released, and it's funny because we just talked about it a week or two ago in the first podcast, and we're only on episode 3, is GT350 and 350R getting the digital dash. We finally gotten to a place where we're comfortable selling those. There's a lot that goes into it. There's some things you're going to give up and lose. I'm going to let Sam cover that a little bit with you guys. And Jack, you're welcome to ask some probing questions since you have a 350R. And you don't even have a radio in an R, so I'm not sure that you really care. But for the GT350 and 350R guys that care,
no. I have the electronic package, so I have the radio.
Oh, you do? You don't have the radio delete? Oh,
no.
Okay.
You think Mrs. Determined Veteran was going to let me buy a car without AC or a radio? Come on, man. Are you crazy?
I mean, maybe you've already got one fast car, my friend. So. We can talk about that a little bit. We're obviously offering a bundle at Hellhorse, including the exhaust system, the FCIM, the dash, the buttons. But Sam, why don't you can you take us through what outside of the exhaust options that we're offering? We've got a bundle and a price, and you can talk about that. But what are we replacing? What are we officially losing? What are the little side effects that we're giving up? Like we're going from a 9K to an 8K tack. We're going to go from a 220 speedo to 180 mile an hour speedo.
Is it?
You can break it down a little bit better, but
factory.
Say again.
Is it 220 in the GT350 factory?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, I haven't been in one in a while. We talked about this in the first podcast. We just didn't sell anything then. So essentially, the way our kit works, you keep all your features except for active exhaust. That's the one thing you absolutely will lose, which is why we're bundling an exhaust with it. Because if you replace the exhaust, you don't need the active anymore. It's a win-win right there. Yeah, like he said, 220 to 180. You go from 9K to 8K. However, if you do use that last 200 revs over from 88 to 8200, the digital will display above 8. It just won't. It'll just do it in the numbers. Obviously, the line ends at 8.
I mean, that's a good point. I'm not trying to cut you off. That's a good point that I probably don't answer enough on the phone calls that come in is the digital readout will go above 8,000 RPMs. The physical lines are not, but the digital readout itself is going to go above 8K.
The speed will go higher as well, though.
Correct. It's just the hard design we don't control. We talked about that in the first episode, but that's a good point that we bring up at the first time. The big tack numbers and the big speedo numbers will go above 8 and 180. It's just the converted analog to digital looking features.
Something I do want to add is you can't manually change the damping mode from normal to sport. However, if you change the drive mode when it's in sport or track, it changes the damping mode to sport still. It just doesn't display it. But trust me, in the background, it is actually doing it. Okay,
and then what else are we losing? So we're talking about they're going to get exhaust with our kit. They're going to get a Bullet Mustang cluster.
Until you lose.
Right, but what else? I mean, they're going to need the GT-FCIM. They're getting an SCCM.
Okay,
there's a lot of parts that I know we're throwing in this kit.
The switches go from being the black to chrome. That is a change because it's a GT EcoBoost FCIM. So there's unfortunately no option if you're going to if you want to keep drive modes. Now, if you don't want to keep drive modes, I mean, whatever, you can get no FCIM, which can lower the price, but I'm pretty sure most people will want to keep drive modes.
Yeah, I mean, you're already giving up exhaust modes. I don't know why I'd want to give up drive modes over some chrome.
Well, you keep exhaust modes if you give up drive modes, so...
That's true. I mean, it's kind of one or the other, and they can buy it either way. And we've bundled it with the AWE Touring catback exhaust initially, that GT center bezel, the bullet cluster. They're having to replace their SCCM as well, correct? On all of them? All years have to replace the SCCM, or only some years?
It's the same. 18 and plus have the newer software. You don't have to replace it; just has to have the programming change.
Okay, perfect. And we've got that listed at about what did we talk about? $3,800 shipped, including the catback exhaust system to be able to do that, and that's including the FCIM and all the stuff for the 15 to 17 guys that are going to require an SCCM and everything like normal GT guys. I think that's what we talked about.
I don't remember the pricing, but we should probably look at that and make sure we're not missing anything. But you can go on the website.
But I mean, right now that's not available through the website. That's going to be a call or contact us to purchase. It's not going to be something that I'm going to list online initially because there's so many varying options. Some people may not want AWE Touring exhaust. They want my Corsa Extreme or Borla Attacks or Stinger S-Type or the F-Type S's or, the Tourings or MagnaFlow or whatever it is.
Or if you're just like ultra quiet, you can keep your stock exhaust with the valves closed.
Yeah, if you were to do that,
remove the valves and manually open them all the time.
If you were to do that dash swap, Jack, as a consumer, would you care about losing exhaust modes and going to a normal exhaust system as a consumer with a 350R, or does that active exhaust make or break it for you?
No, I mean, because as soon as I get in the car, it's already going in track mode. You know what I mean, for the louder exhaust. I mean, that's the whole thrill of having the Voodoo, is hearing it like that. When the baffles are closed, I don't know why anybody would drive their car around like that. Beyond me. As a GT350R consumer, and like Sam was talking earlier before we went live. The little gadgets and the little different things that the digital dash gives you compared to the analog, it does kind of bring the car more into the 21st century as far as that's concerned. I think that's a great price. When you guys think about all the R&D that you guys have had to do to get to that point, now you have, an exhaust going in there, because a lot of people already swapped. I mean, for the most, you have a segment of people that are doing exhaust changes on their GT350R. So if you can get a digital dash kit, kind of bringing more in that bullet style cluster, and you're coming with an exhaust, I mean, that's a hell of a deal. I mean, I didn't even know you guys offered it for that price, but yeah, I would definitely, as a conventional 350R owner, be mighty impressed to have that on my car. Losing like the tachometer and the miles per hour. I mean, let's get real. I mean, as long as you know where your parameters are when you're shifting that car, you'll be fine. It's not like it's going to hurt anything, if that makes sense.
No, I mean, it totally makes sense when you put it that way. So that is available. That is something you have to contact us directly for. Send an email, call. Instagram, Facebook messaging is kind of hit and miss if you're going to get a reply, but call, text, email. If that is something you're interested in getting with a 350 or 350R, it's now available. Sam and I are comfortable releasing it to the public. You're going to give up a few things, but it's mostly aesthetic when it comes to what you're getting. And that's an interesting point that you made, Jack, that I don't really think about that because I don't really drive a lot of cars with active exhaust that, I don't know, 80, 90, even if it's 65% of guys that have active exhaust are probably putting it in track mode anyways, or at least opening up the valves when they start the car.
Yeah,
I don't even think about that when we're talking about it. Like all the posts I see are like, is there any way to start the car in track mode, or why do I always have to put it in track mode every time I start it?
Right. And I'll give you, for example, on the like my ZL1, I mean, that was one of the first mods I did was I took out all the active exhaust and everything else. And now I have, of course, the Extreme and mid pipe and Cook's headers. So, I mean, as an automotive enthusiast, I mean, the last thing I want to do is have a quiet muscle car. I mean, but to each their own though too. So, but as a consumer,
some people do. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, now again, like I said, I'm just talking from my experience as a consumer.
Absolutely.
There's probably for one Jack, there's probably 10 others saying nay, but just depending on, I think the most important thing that you guys want to make sure to get across to the consumers is, hey, look, if you do this kit, it will change the dichotomy of how your car is going to be set up. And as long as you're cool with that those parameters left and right, then you'll be good to go.
Right. Exactly. Well, I guess we can leave that there. If people have questions, give us a contact. I guess the next big thing we can skip into, Sam and Jack, is, talking about how to make the decision with your Mustang between staying NA, going forced induction, and how to kind of plan your build for what you want to do when you first get a car or first decide to start modifying the car you've had for a while. And then some of the ins and outs with that, along with like, hey, what can I have in California? What can't I have in California? I mean, that even goes for like the Hell Horse cars I sell through Joe Myers Ford and things like that. And just kind of the decision about picking a direction for your build, your budget, you're planning it, understanding the likelihood of things kind of breaking and or not breaking, or how far am I going to have to start replacing parts when I go through this?
What parts do I have to replace to achieve my goal?
Or what parts do I have to replace to achieve my goal? And what's funny is all of us sitting here pretty much have boosted cars. Jack, you've got the 350 that's not boosted yet that we're putting the twin turbo kit on. But I think you guys can interrupt me at any point with some injection or questions. But I think the biggest thing you have to figure out between NA and forced induction is what's your budget. And how close to that?
I mean, you got to look at that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. Because if you want to go, say you want a 10-second car, do you want a 9-second car? Do you want an 8-second car? And oh, by the way, do you really know how fast a 10-second car is because you've never been in one? Those are, I guess, and not to cut everybody off, but that's, to me, as a builder, that's one of the biggest mistakes I see from people that ask for my advice is they say, well, I want to have a 10-second car. And I go, do you know what it takes to have a 10-second car? Cages. If you're going so fast, you got to have a cage, fire suit, if you're running ethanol, etc. This is going to get into a lengthy discussion if we let it, because there's so many different ways of looking at that.
Yeah, I think as a top level, you're hitting it on the money, and that's kind of why I start with budget. Is like, how deep are your pockets? Are you sitting on a $10,000 bonus from your employer, or stock market, or bad time talking about the stock market, or crypto earnings or something like that you got 10 grand to play with? But
it's funny you brought up the stock market, because it's like crazy right now.
Yeah. Where are you at? Is this something that you can continually throw money at? Is warranty important to you? Every time I have a discussion with somebody about their build, it's like, what do you want to do?
Driver?
Is it your daily driver?
That's a great point.
Another thing, I know Hell Horse caters a lot towards drag, but another thing is, are you going to be going to the drag strip? Are you going to be staying on the street? Are you going to be going road course, autocross? These are all important questions to ask when you're looking at all these things. Because sometimes everybody's like, more power, more power, more power. Sometimes that's not always the answer. And people are like, well, I just want to be fast, but that's not always the answer.
And fast is a relative term for where you live.
Yeah.
And if you come to Houston, 700 isn't shit. Yeah. If I take 700 wheel horsepower to like Pensacola, Florida, everybody's losing to the car I'm bringing. So that's why I always, when I'm having these discussions with folks, to your guys' great points, is I always tell them we need to start with budget. Do you have a surplus of money that when you start pushing this car, if things fail, you can replace it? Or do we need to depend on reliability? Because there is nothing wrong with taking an S550, S197, a Coyote car or a Voodoo car in this case, throwing ethanol and intake headers and exhaust at it and just enjoying the crap out of the car. I don't think any of us disagree with that. But if you're truly trying to go fast, one of the first questions I always ask people is, how deep are your pockets? And
right.
You had somebody recently, Jeff, that I remember was asking you questions, and you're like, this is going to be a $25,000 build. Can you afford that? And people don't realize how expensive. I mean, and it really is exponential. When the higher horsepower you want to go, the just freaking more expensive it gets, because you got to do so much. But
I always tell people, I'm like, listen, if you're budget conscious, whether you're drag racing, roll racing, or need to keep as a daily driver and you do none of the above, centrifugal kits are the way to go. And we can have a whole discussion some other time about PD blowers versus centrifugal versus turbos and things like that. You can get into a Paxton kit, no matter what model year it is, for between $5,000 and $6,500, and then throw a tune in it. A centrifugal supercharger like a Paxton on one step down pulley. I have experience with Paxtons. I'm not a big Pro Charger guy. I'm very loyal to Vortec Paxton. I've never offered Pro Charger. I know everything about it, but my experience comes from the Paxton side. So for those people listening, a Paxton 2200 with a 3.6 pulley on pump gas, you can make 7 to 750 all day, super reliable. I have customers that have had that for 4 years and 60, 70, 80,000 miles from them driving around town. They drive it to work. It drives fine in the rain, but when they put their foot in it, it makes great power. So a lot of it is goal and usage, like you guys were talking about. And that whole budget thing, because once you cross really that 750-ish number where you have to go to dedicated fuel system, and even if it's nitrous or some other term of forced induction, you're subject to things failing prematurely. It seems like Ford has built a platform that's kind of happy at that 7 to 750 wheel horsepower number for the most part, without digging too deep into the weeds like Jack was talking about. But if you really want to cross that threshold, you start ending up in what I consider a tier system. Hey, you're good with a Gen 2 motor up to here. We can plan it doing it this way or this way or this way based on how you're using the car. But the conversation is always up like, hey, you're going to go through half shafts, you're going to go through tires, you might go through a rear end. If you're not building the transmission, you're definitely going to shit out a transmission at some point. You need to understand that at this much boost level, you may or may not push ahead. Do you have the money to put a short block in this car if you had to put the money aside for a short block?
Which is surprisingly cheaper than most people think. But
yeah, a short block
until you add the labor. The labor. Everybody looks at it and goes, "Oh, I can buy a Gen 2 short block for $1,900 plus core. That's awesome." And then they go ask somebody for the labor, and they're like, "Yeah, it's $2,600 in labor." And they're like, "Holy shit, this is a $5,000 problem I created." So,
yeah,
those bills
is cheap though, Jeff. I mean, let's look at the brass tacks. If someone said, "Hey, we'll do your short block for $2,800," I'd be like, "Oh, you go ahead and mess with it. I'm fine with that." But this is getting into what we're talking about. Is you got to have the budget established. You need to have clear paths of egress on if something goes bad. And I guess I'm talking more Army than anything else. But basically, if it goes to hell in a handbasket, you need to have the money to pay for it. And if you're trying to build a fast car and you don't do any of the supporting mods, you're not ready to go fast yet, But
well, and on top of the supporting mods, having the money set aside to be able to fix what may or may not break. It's always the nickel and diming that seems to get customers caught off guard. They'll go online, they'll see a package, they'll see a Hellion, a Hellhorse, a Paxton, a Whipple, a VMP. I don't care what it is, power package versus these NA guys looking at cams and things like that. And I'll talk about that in a minute, budget wise. And they go, "Oh, great. We'll just keep using the Paxton as an example to keep this very linear. Hey, $6,200, I can get a complete Paxton kit minus tune. I'll get a device and a tune from Palm Beach Dyno, and that's another $1,050. So for like $7,300, I can go make 7 to 750 wheel horsepower." It's the little stuff they forget. It's the more frequent oil changes. It's the cost of the gas increase. It's the cost of having to make sure you're adding an octane booster or little things like that.
And if you're on the drag strip, yeah, exactly. Or if you're on the drag strip,
tires
and a roll cage. By NHL.
Yeah, I mean, outside of safety equipment, but you're going to be going through. If you go to a drag pack rear end, that's a great point. If you go to a drag pack rear end, you're not getting 60,000 miles on a set of tires anymore. You're getting 2,000 to 4,000 miles on a set of tires in the rear. So, do I have the money that if I drive 2,000 to 4,000 miles every even 45 days, can I put a set of $600 to $800 tires in the rear every month and a half?
Right. Well, and that goes back to, are you trying to build a daily? Are you building a daily, or are you
have another car? Right.
Right. Because to a lot of us in this automotive industry, we have multiple vehicles, so I don't drive my ZL1 or my 350R every day. My truck is my daily driver, because if something goes down with the build, I don't have to worry about, oh crap, how am I going to go to the grocery store? Oh crap, how's my wife going to go to work? All these things. And I'm not saying anything like to people, like if they're not in that position, I've been very fortunate with my career to be able to get to this, and my wife's career in the Army. But the point is that you always have to plan these builds out, because they can get very expensive if you do not do the research first. Now, thankfully, here at Hellhorse, you guys make sure you educate the consumer and you ask all the blueprinting questions to really find out what the dominant buying motive is for the individual purchasing it.
Well, yeah,
However,
I mean, that's That's totally
However,
true. Like Sam, go ahead.
You guys do a lot more than just the average, like, oh, I want a set of tires. Okay, Jack, boom, 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 boom. Here's a ticket. Nice to see you. You guys actually, take ownership of that situation and move forward. And that's why I love working with this company. But, the consumer has to educate themselves. And for the majority of people, sadly, all they do want to say is, I want to go fast. And they don't realize, for example, I raced a twin turbo Mustang over the weekend. So he had his boost set up to like 15 pounds. Now he used a different competitor's kit. I'm not going to mention the competitor's kit name, but he ran like a 9.6 at 150 and then came to me crying because he said the track wanted to kick him off. And I said, well, you don't have a cage, you don't have a parachute, you don't have anything. And he's like, well, I didn't know I needed that. And I'm like, that's kind of weird. You're building this car and you don't know that stuff. So, I raced him I told the track I was going to make him go on wastegate pressure. We ran. And I'll just leave it like that. That video will be coming out here in a week or so. But, that's a really good example of people not doing their due diligence to make sure that what they're trying to buy and build and everything else is in their scope of budget. Because, like you said, like the NA build, an NA build can get very expensive. But if you want a solid 10-second car that's not going to get heat soaked, NA build is probably the way to go. But it's a lot more mechanically inclined versus bolt on from like a blower or a turbo kit, if that makes sense.
Well, and that's where you got to be you're totally fine. That's where you got to be a little bit more cost efficient, because Sam will probably get a good laugh out of this, because I know he's read the tickets where I'm like, don't fuck with that. That's a waste of money. Save your money, go force induction. The thing that I run into with a lot of NA guys is they want to do these NA builds like it's an SN95 or a Fox body or an LS swap vehicle with, big cam and everything else, or super high compression. And those are really cool builds. But I'll get tickets that people are like, hey, I want to do intake manifold. I want to do an intake. I want to do injectors, E85. I want to do, stage 3 cams, stage two cams. I want to do headers and full exhaust. And I'm like, why? And they're like, oh, because, I want to be super fast NA. And I'm like, okay, well, you understand all of those parts, just the parts is like $7,000, and you can go forced induction for the same or a little bit more money.
Cams are a little different on a Coyote than they are on the old 302.
Right. And that's where I think the difference is. Like, oh, I'm just going to do cams. I'm like, brother, cams $1,800 to $2,500 out of the gate before the labor. And then you don't understand what the cost of labor is of doing those cams. Alex Alvord just went through that, having to, do valve springs and how tedious the process is of breaking down. And anybody that's done oil pump gears and crank sprockets can tell you how tedious it is to get to that point.
Hey, oil pump gears are way easier than cams. I'd rather.
Yeah, but if you're going to, it's like I tell people, if you're going to get to the point of doing cams, you might as well do head studs and head gaskets.
Yep.
You're already there. Like if you're pulling the cams, you're literally 30 minutes away from having the heads off.
Pull the head off, yeah.
You might as well just pull the head off and keep going. So, the amount of labor you're putting into it versus being able to say, put a supercharger or a turbo kit on there at, 8 to 10 pounds of boost and make more horsepower than the NA car is going to make, might be a more cost-effective solution for whatever your build is, or at least something to consider. Because, when you get to that level of NA, why? I just don't think people like, why?
The other thing is, too, you're just talking about put like a blower on the car. Now this is a debated topic, but one of my biggest recommendations on the Coyote or the Voodoo, if you're going to go like a blower or, something centrifugal, go ahead and replace your old oil pump gears in that crank sprocket. Those are the weak points, and that's why you upgrade those. So like you were, I think it was Sam saying earlier.
But you're gonna do that if you're NA and doing cams and everything at the same time. You might as well do it while you're there.
Roger, exactly. And so that's why I think Sam was saying earlier, like you're doing cams, you might as well do the heads, because you need to take them off because you've already got everything there to pull off the heads, and you just need to get head bolt studs and gaskets, at that point. But very good point, man. Going fast is a very expensive hobby, but it's so freaking worth it.
It doesn't have to be. If you've got like an 18 plus and you're looking to make 500 to 525.
Oh yeah.
Intake, headers, exhaust, E85, leave it. You'll be there with a great tune. You'll hit that 500-ish number. You don't got to go crazy. The car will run forever.
Not even that expensive.
It's not that expensive. It'll last. You got a nice 500 wheel horsepower car. When you start talking about wanting to add cams so that you can make 550, I'm like, do you want to make 550 or do you want to make 650? Because for the same price, we can make 650.
Right. Exactly.
And then you start tiering from there to like, well, then you need a fuel system and all this other stuff to build 1,000 horsepower car, wheel horsepower cars and things like that. But the big thing to consider in NA versus forced induction is how far are you trying to go?
Exactly.
I've had multiple customers, and they're good buddies of mine, that have taken it all the way to full bolt-on with cams and everything else. And I can tell you, within 6 months, they were pulling the cams and everything out to go forced induction and going, I really should have just gone forced induction out of the gate, because I actually would have saved money at this point. I was $6,000 or $5,000 into it before with the labor and everything. And I could have just bought this boost kit and put it on in my driveway outside the oil pump, gears, and crank sprocket that most people aren't comfortable with. And I could have turned it down to wastegate pressure, made 650. The car would have lasted forever. Or I could have ran it on 93 at, 10, 11 pounds of boost, and the car would have lasted, forever, with an asterisk of what I always tell people: if it's a mass produced motor and things can happen, it's not a custom built motor, and get more out of it, or get more versatility out of it, or even, to like Sam's point, whatever you want to do with that car is more adjustable. You're not going to take an all out NA build and go autocross it. You're just not, same thing with, you're not going to take a 2,000 wheel horsepower drag car and street car every day.
Right.
But, when you go all out NA like these guys want to do, even street car life becomes a little bit more difficult, in my opinion, from what I've seen. You're just dealing with a bigger beast of a car. And that's, again, not addressed in safety and things like that. But if you're just trying to make 500-ish, and simple bolt-ons, be done, enjoy the car, love it, work on cosmetics. If you're already setting aside $5,000 or $6,000 to go NA, you should really look at forced induction. And, like I said, even if you go into a Paxton or a Vortec blower out of the gate, it's a great way to get into boost and not lose a whole lot of money, and make great power and keep the car reliable. I don't think anybody disagrees with that, outside of the few downfalls of belt driven and high RPM power and things like that. But it does keep a linear power curve. I shouldn't say linear. It keeps a similar power curve to stock. So if you like making your power in the high RPMs and keeping it ease of driving, a centrifugal is great for you. And if you can get there for about the same money, why wouldn't you?
What if you have an S197 with a Coyote, or a 15 through 17, or even an 18 plus, and you are one of those people who doesn't have a lot of budget? Maybe you bought your car used, you just, it's your daily driver, but you want a little more out of it. I know the obvious answer. What's the recommendation there? What's kind of a way to make it fun and maybe a little more power without doing anything that's going to jeopardize reliability or going to break?
You can keep it real simple. You could do a Mac cat delete instead of headers. I'm not a big believer in the cheap 2M headers.
For the S197s, the cat deletes are stupid easy.
Right. You do cat deletes, do an exhaust system, do an intake, 18 intake or a Boss 302 intake manifold, and throw through, E85 in it and flex fuel tune it, or
these are all things that can build on top of each other too. You don't have to do it at the same time.
But you don't have to go spend $1,200 on a set of headers. You could do cat deletes, get similar gains, put an exhaust system on the car, and tune it with the E85 and an intake, and be done with it. The biggest things for the S197 guys, and even the 15 to 17 guys, is ditching that piece of shit intake manifold, in my opinion. 15 to 17s are super restrictive compared to 18s, which we know 18s are basically GT350s with a color change and IMRC change, or going to a Boss 302 intake manifold. You'll pick up power from that. Boosted guys see PSI drop because there's more manifold to utilize. So intake manifold, intake, cat delete, exhaust, injectors, and fueling, and you can probably knock that out for a couple $1,000. It'll make more power. It'll wake it up. It'll be tuned. It'll be more responsive, and it'll drive forever.
Unfortunately,
as you're changing the oil and doing what you're supposed to do.
Here in St. Louis, the E85 is hard to find. There's only, especially around me, up northwest, I think there's more where there's a lot of car people, but it's hard to find. So it's hard for me to justify going E85 because I'll have to drive 20 minutes just to fill my tank, and that's a quarter tank almost. So, that kind of sucks.
That's a big expense for everybody, and a big worry is, I tell folks, like, if I want to go from Houston to Dallas in my boosted car that's on E85, and I'm going to do it on E85, I have to carry 5 to 10 gallons of fuel in the trunk, because between Houston and Dallas, there's no E85 station. So if there's any delay in getting there, I may not make it to the E85 station in Dallas. Right. So, if you're not in a major metropolitan area that you're staying within and you really need to use the vehicle, I mean, E85 may not be for you. You might need to flex tune. And that kind of goes to why turbos might make more sense than superchargers from the simple standpoint that you can lower the boost, change the tune, and flip between fuels as you need to, and not have to worry about pulley changes and everything else. But yeah, I mean, as far as NA goes, I'm all about simple bolt-on. If you get beyond simple bolt-on standpoint with NA, you might as well consider it forced induction. I mean, it really depends. The best thing to do is have a discussion with whether it's us you're getting parts from or a local shop or things like that. Have a discussion of really what you want to do. If they're just trying to sling you parts and throw you out the door and not really being, not really trying to work with you to figure out what you're trying to actually accomplish, I think that's a little bit more of a cause for concern, because you do need to be directionally focused, budget focused, and understand that going to certain extents and beyond are going to cost you a couple of bucks, and you need to have some emergency money in the bank for when your transmission decides to take a shit or something happens that a lot of people don't look at. I guess that would be a good way to put it. Would you agree, Sam?
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. I think you've hit all the important parts there. There's a lot you can talk about on this topic.
Yeah, I mean, we could continue this topic on a different discussion, but that's a good way to look at it. I just don't want to carry this on for a 3-hour podcast. And we'll talk about the forced induction and what makes the Hell Horse kit and stuff like that different in episode 4. But I guess another great topic with that is, is a 15 to 17 for a project build better than an 18 plus? If you can get a S197 for super cheap and put a Gen 2 block in it for super cheap, does that make more sense? To me, I still think 15s to 17s bring the best of value. It eliminates the whole DI issue. Yes, 18 pluses are going fast. Nobody's denying that. Nobody's denying the 10R is a great platform. But if you can pick up these S550s, the 15s to 17s, in my opinion, for mid to low 20s, like they've been popping up, I mean, that's a great price to be able to build a project car on. I would rather buy something that this equity's out of. I mean, the 6R80s are still fast. You've got a 17, Sam? 15? 16? Something like that. 16. I've got a 15. I still think for the money, a 15 to 17 is an awesome place to start with a project build.
Cheap, amazingly.
Yeah, I mean, the cars are cheap. The fuel systems are cheaper. Most of the forced induction setups are going to be a little bit cheaper because they don't require as many parts as the DI and port injected setups require in the 18s and up. And 6Rs are still an awesome transmission. There's guys going 7s with them. I mean, you can't knock it over a 10R. And so when you're talking about building a car and projects and what to look at, I still think if you can get a great option the way you want, 15 to 17 with lower medium miles and save a ton of money, it's still better than buying a brand new car to modify that's going to take a massive residual hit in the first year or two. I mean, that's kind of the way I look at it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a 6R80. I mean, there really isn't. Build it, convert it, whatever you want to do. They're still going fast.
Yeah, a 6R80 is if you had to pick a transmission, it's probably one of the best you can have, other than an aftermarket one, as far as for drag racing. I mean, I've got several friends that have 6R80s and they love it over a 10-speed. You know what I mean? So, very good point, Jeff.
Yeah, and I guess I mean, I've got experience of both, and I don't lean one way or the other that one's better than the other. Obviously, if you're going to buy it brand new, like the Hell Horse package cars, obviously that's going to be a 2020 or newer. I mean, you can buy a car and bring it and have it done just like any other consumer. But if you're looking to finance the whole thing, obviously you're going to be in a 2020 at this point. And I think that's probably, I mean, unless you guys had some other input, that's probably a very top level discussion of NA versus forced induction and budgeting and trying to pick a direction on your build. We're kind of all over the place, but I just don't know how far in the weeds we want to get and drag this thing out for forever.
I would say what I would simply put it like this: if you're planning on doing a build, look yourself in the mirror and be honest with yourself with your budget, your goals, and your plans, and then your goals. Again, that's maybe the senior NCO in me, but it can't be any simpler than that. It's just people really need to take ownership of their own selves before they reach out to companies. Now, again, you guys are going to give them that feedback, of course, but as a consumer calling a company, I've already done all my research prior to talking to them and having a discussion. So that's really my point, is that I really want to hit home. We can, as a consumer, get good resources, but nothing beats being educated yourself in the subject.
I think that's a good point, and making sure that that if the information you're getting is sounding proper and headed in the right direction, or a little like that doesn't sound like what I was looking for, as well. You got any input on that, Sam, or you kind of?
Something I'm thinking about is, which I know I talk to you about sometimes, is when it comes to your budget, don't strap yourself too thin. Something I see a lot of people do is they spend too much money and then they regret it, and they either try to resell the parts quickly, cancel order. Just don't do that. We're here to make money. We want to sell you parts, but we really don't want to see you struggle. We want everybody to be happy and successful. So just, if you don't know if you can afford it, you probably can't. So just wait, be patient. It is worth the wait and worth not strapping yourself thin, because I've been there, done that, and I know a lot of people have. It's just not worth it.
I think that's a great point as well. And I guess that's where we'll kind of leave this episode. We had some other topics we're going to talk about, but we're crossing close to the hour mark, and I don't know how long people are going to listen. So, some final updates. Our red shirts are available on the website. The new Square Design red shirts are available on the website. I know we got to get some of those out to both of you guys. New website is in the works as well. Sam and I are working on compiling that to change the look, add search function on the desktop, make your guys' life a little bit easier and more convenient to shop around and find what you're looking for. I'm in the process of having another 3,000 products added to the website, and that's not including the F-Series truck stuff that we're trying to include this year as well. Been working on that a lot this week of working through that data to add I think it might be 2,600, but it's 3,000. We'll call it 3,000 new products to the website. We get asked a lot what wheels we've in for. If you're looking for nice wheels, we're all about Belgian wheels. We sell Raystar, I sell Weld, I sell Forge Star. For the truck guys, pretty much if you see it, I get it. Fuel wells, fuels, and I don't know, whatever else, the truck wheels that you see floating around, our American Force wheels, Hostiles, TIS. I mean, if you see it, you get it. We can get the tires for it, oversized tires. It's not something I really advertise, but we do carry all of that. And I think one of the goals, on a side note for that, is to start building some wheels and tire packages for you guys on the new website to be able to pick wheels and tires. Maybe not in the same fashion as like American Muscle and LMR, but pick a wheel, pick some tires that make sense, and maybe some recommendations for usage as well. Am I missing anything, Sam, or have we kind of covered everything?
I think we've covered enough for today.
I guess we can go more into detail about PD blowers versus centrifugal and turbo, and actually budgeting for a build in an in-depth, all-in-one topic in one episode. And thank Jack for joining us, and make sure you guys find Determined Veteran on YouTube and Instagram. And you can find his posts shared on our Instagram or our website to be able to track him down if you don't recall this when you get to that point. And Jack, I want to thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, and appreciate both of you joining us. And
if you're stuck home right now, now's the best time to buy carb parts. Might as well.
Absolutely.
A lot of time in your garage. You can get a lot of quarantine
stay
and chill.
Home, stay safe.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I have one thing to add. For the DV brand, there's 22 veterans a day that take their own life. That's one is way too many. And that's what we're trying to prevent here at Determined Veteran, and taking care of our warfighters. I appreciate that. I just wanted to put that in there because it is a mission statement for my channel.
Now, we appreciate everything you've done and have done for us, and appreciate your service. And be sure to check Determined Veteran out and look at ways you can help him help everybody else at the same time. It's a really good thing that he's doing, unlike a lot of YouTube channels. So we'll wrap it up there, gentlemen, and appreciate everybody listening to episode 3 of the podcast, and be sure to catch us for episode 4 later on this week. And again, Jack, thanks for joining us. Sam, we'll catch you all later.
Thanks, Jeff.